Hi there, it's Martin again. Just coming back at you with something interesting in my head. At least I think it's interesting. If you saw my last video, I was a little crazy on that one, but hey, who isn't? And sometimes it's fun. Today I just want to talk to you about a book that I've been reading. And I think I've mentioned this author before because I've read one of his other books, Think and Grow Rich. We talk about Napoleon Hill. And he's got a couple of books out there, and the one that I'm reading now is called Outwitting the Devil, and it's an interesting book. It's a little, well, it's Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill's not a normal guy, as Vic Streishaus would say. He's not a typical guy. Now, if you read his story and you hear about what he went through, you can see that he's not a guy that did things that the majority of everybody else would do. When everybody else zigs, he zags. He decides something and goes and does it. So I'm reading through this book, and it's telling the story of and there's a foreword by the people who actually printed the book. And the weird thing about this is the book was printed years after Napoleon Hill died. He had the manuscript all typed up probably in the 20s or 30s, and then just held on to it, never printed it. And when he passed, his wife kept the manuscript, and she wouldn't print it either. And then when she passed, she left it to his business partner's wife, or his business partner, and his business partner's wife didn't allow him to print it until after she had passed. So 3 people had to pass away before this book ever hit print. And it's interesting because it's written right at the time of the beginning of the Great Depression. And it was printed right at the time of the beginning of one of our more modern, more recent financial downturns. And the advice and the information in this book that actually helped Napoleon Hill make it through the Depression is still extremely valid today. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what's in the book, because you really should read it for yourself. It's one of those things where if I tell you what I think about the book, then that's going to interfere with you drawing your own conclusions. And this is something that you really do need to read for yourself and draw your own conclusions. But I am going to talk to you a little bit about some ideas that I've gathered from the book. But before we go any farther, there will be a link down below the in the comment section there in the description box that will take you to a site that has links to this book plus a bunch of others. So if you want to read this, it's in PDF. You can go there, you can link to it, you can download it, you can read it, and it's all there for you. But really, this Napoleon Hill does this to me all the time. It takes me forever to read through his books because I'll read a paragraph or two and then I got to stop and think about it. I usually read pretty fast, and I can get through, well, this book's altogether 302 pages. Now, I can get through that in an afternoon if I just sit down and read page 1, page 2, page 3. But I can't do that with Napoleon Hill's work, because I go through a paragraph or two, and then I got to stop, and I got to think about it, and I got to run it through my mind, and then I got to kind of see what happens if I go this way, or what happens if I go that way. And that's a lot of what Napoleon Hill does and what he's talking about in this book, because the title, Outwitting the Devil, he has in his mind, he says, a conversation with the devil. And now, you can decide whether he's actually speaking with the devil or whether he's being allegorical in his method here. Now, I know in reading his other work, I know one of the things that Napoleon Hill does is he will have conversations in his mind with other people. He talks about that in Think and Grow Rich a little bit. I think it was Think and Grow Rich, where he has a list of about 5 people that that he has conversations in his mind with. So he will use his imagination to get different points of view on whatever he's looking at. And that's something that, well, I don't know, I've done that since I was a kid. I don't tell a whole lot of people because most of the time folks just call it daydreaming. And a lot of times it is. If you just sit there and, oh, what if I won the lottery, and how many cars would I buy, and what, yeah, you're just kind of running your mind off into into some wild green pasture that has no real purpose. But you can use the power of your imagination to help you succeed and advance yourself in ways that most people never really even think of. You can do what Napoleon Hill talks about, is have conversations in your mind with people you've never met. Your mind, your imagination is so powerful that it can take an opposite. You can have an argument with yourself and come to a conclusion that you might not have even thought of until you started that back and forth inside your own mind. You know, playing devil's advocate with yourself, if you don't mind the expression. So that's really kind of what I'm looking at, is how our mind works, how we can use things that you know, we did all this as children. You know, had imaginary friends, had imaginary this, imaginary that, and very precise and very specific things that we worked up in our head that adults told us we couldn't do anymore when we started growing up. And I think that is one of the most terrible things that you could do to a child, is to tell them to stop using their imagination. Your imagination can grow up with you and can be the most powerful tool you've ever had to achievement. Your imagination is what helps you achieve anything. It doesn't matter what you want. You will have to use your imagination. You will have to use your mind to get what you want. There's no way to achieve anything, to gain anything, without first thinking about it in your mind, about how you're going to do it. The mind goes first and plans it out, and then the body follows along and follows the plan. I think if you look at a lot of my other ones, there's a saying from the martial arts that I really like, and that's the mind leads and the body follows. And also, you know, you can look at anything where you're sitting right now. You're sitting in front of a computer. That computer was imagined in someone's mind first, before it was ever built. Somebody had to think about it. Okay, how are we going to do this? How is it going to work? And they thought about it, and they planned it out, and then they built it. If they hadn't thought about it and planned it out, they would have never been able to build it. That is what I'm talking about here today. That is what the imagination does for us. It allows us to think things out, to run along a line of thought and say, okay, you know, if I do this, what are the possible outcomes? And you can pick one and say, okay, now if I do this and this happens, what will I do? If I do this and this happens, what will I do? If I do this and this happens, what will I do? Again, you know, back to the martial arts. That's a big part of the basic training that almost any style of martial arts gives you, is you think about something before it happens. you have practiced it so much, you've gone through it so much in your head, you've seen it inside your mind so many times that when it happens, it's just you already know what you're going to do before you even stop and think about it, because you've spent so much time preparing to deal with that whatever, that by the time, if it ever actually happens, you've dealt with it before you've even thought about it, because your brain has already said, okay, plan one and go. That's what I really think is the power that Napoleon Hill talks about, and he talks about our motivation. He calls it his other self, and yeah, I'm not going to argue with his choice of terminology. I think that's as good a name as anything for it, but I look at it more as our subconscious mind, that we have a whole lot of us that we don't really think about a lot, and we can act very differently. We are motivated by different things, and our actions and our thoughts tie into that motivation. And there are two major motivating factors for almost all of us. As a matter of fact, if you paid attention to marketing, you will see that marketing uses these two things to do what they do, to sell their products. One is we are motivated by fear. Fear is a great motivator. It will get people to do things. It will get people to do some crazy things if they are afraid. When they are caught up in that whole fear mentality, normal, average, everyday people can do some very horrible things to other people. And not even think about it. Just boom. The other motivating factor is faith. And I don't mean faith as in a religion, but if you observe any of the major religions that are on the world in the world today, you will find that those motivate people to do things. Now, whether those things you feel are good or bad isn't really the issue at right now, but it is a great motivator to get people to do things, a belief. But again, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about faith, the belief that you have something, that you can do something, that knowledge inside of yourself that, yes, I can do this, and go out and do it. Fear always kind of pulls you back, and faith always pushes you forward. And that's really one of the biggest things that is the difference between those two motivating factors. And there are stories all over the place, but you can come up with all kinds of allegories, parables, fables, whatever kind of stories you wanna refer to, that can demonstrate the difference between a fear motivation and a faith motivation. Well, top of my head right now comes from I'm not even sure where in the Bible it comes from, so I'm just going to paraphrase the story, because it's the story that's important, not so much where it comes from. The story is, a man finds a piece of property that has a treasure hidden in it. And he wants to be able to get the treasure. So he's certain the treasure's there. So what he does is he goes and he sells everything he owns. Everything. Sells it all so that he can get enough money to go and buy that piece of land and then own the treasure. And when he does that, he owns the treasure, and now he has something that is more valuable than everything that he sold, and he can go buy everything back. He can go buy new stuff. He becomes an extremely wealthy person. And that is all based on his belief, his faith, that the actions that he takes are going to get him that treasure. Now, if that same person was being motivated by fear, He would never sell everything he owns. He would hold back. He would say, no, I've got to keep what I have, and maybe I'll find some way later on to perhaps get that treasure. Maybe there's not even a treasure there. I'm just making it up in my mind. But the fear motivation makes this person hold on to everything he's got. Now, granted, financially, he's no worse off than he was the day before, but he's no better either. So if you take that person and you go with the fear motivation, he's stuck exactly where he is. He's making no progress. Nothing's getting better. He's only trying to fight off things getting worse. And if you go with the faith motivation, he's gaining something so much better than he had. And he's not worried about fighting off the worst. And that's really what it kind of boils down to between the two motivations. Is one is going to keep you from doing anything so that you don't have the worst possible outcome, and the other is going to push you to do things so that you get the greater outcome. Now, can sometimes things go wrong? Certainly. Sometimes maybe you were mistaken in your thought that the treasure was in that piece of property. But if you don't do anything, you'll never know. And if you stop after one of those temporary setbacks, Napoleon Hill calls them a temporary defeat. He says no defeat is permanent until you allow it to become permanent. Any defeat or setback is always temporary as long as you keep going forward afterwards. Also, he says that, Napoleon Hill says, and this is something that a lot of other people will say as well, but that within every temporary defeat there is the seed of an equal success. They quote, who is it? Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, for everything you've missed, you've gained something else. For everything you gain, you lose something else. The whole of what we know is a system of compensations. Every defect in one manner is made up in another manner. Every suffering is rewarded, every sacrifice is made up, and every debt is paid. He's talking basically about balance. If you take with one hand, you give with the other. The universe is basic physics here. Again, action and reaction. Things balance out. If you act properly, you will succeed. So I've been going on a long time. Made a few quotes. Hey, again, there's going to be a link below if you want to read that book, plus a few others, I think 10 or 11 other PDFs that are linked to it there. They're all in the same place. You can bookmark the page, come back, and read through things as you want. You can leave a comment in the comment section. You can click the like button. You can see my other videos if you go to my video channel. You can tell me what you think. I like to get response, and I'll answer if you want me to. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.